Welcome back to the channel. Ever had that feeling in your stomach that something isn't right? It's your intuition. It's better to listen to it and be wrong than to ignore it and be right. One night, as I lay in bed unable to sleep, a memory resurfaced. It was something I would occasionally think about or rarely retell, but tonight it felt particularly unsettling. Maybe it's because you can only fully grasp the implications of it when you're older. I was around 13 years old, getting ready for school one morning. My dad was off at work, and my mom was getting ready for hers, I think. Every day, I'd walk to school since it was only about half a mile from my home. I was ready and headed out the door, saying goodbye. I walked down the hill of my yard and down the curved street toward the school, out of sight of my house, but not far. I reached the end of my neighborhood, where I would usually cross the street toward the intersection near the school. But before I did, a dingy-looking black van, maybe a minivan, pulled up in front of my path, positioned along the road parallel to my neighborhood. It was a vehicle I'd never seen in my neighborhood before, nor since. I looked at him, and he looked at me. He was a pale Caucasian man who seemed to be in his 30s, at least. His brown hair was disheveled. But what struck me were his eyes. He had dark circles under them and a very unsettling stare. His window was still up. Then, he motioned for me to come closer with his hand. My heart started pounding. Every instinct told me this was not a good man. So I stood there, looked at him, and shook my head no. A part of me felt like he might jump out, so I prepared to run, but he didn't. He didn't even react to my gesture. He just looked at me, unfazed, before quickly pulling out of the neighborhood and onto the road ahead, and then he was gone. I don't remember what happened next. I think I ran home instead of going to school because I was so startled. I told my mom either that morning or later that day, and she informed my dad, who's a policeman. He called me into the living room. He was on his work laptop and wanted me to describe the man and the car for him. But I didn't have much useful information to give. I was just a dopey middle school boy who wasn't prepared to memorize license plates or had any real knowledge of cars. Unsurprisingly, my dad never found out anything more about the man with the sparse details I provided. The day came and went as just an odd thing that happened to me, and no one had any reason to bring it up again. Every so often, I would remember the time when this creepy man beckoned me toward him in his dingy black van, but only recently has the thought filled me with so much dread. It's possible that if I had just walked up to him, I would never have been seen or heard from again. Just another middle schooler who gets swallowed up by the world and disappears, no witnesses, just an unsolved mystery and a forever grieving family. I shudder to think what could have happened to me, as I now know what people are capable of. Death isn't nearly the worst thing. Or maybe it's all in my head. Maybe he just wanted directions or to ask me something, even though his window was closed, and he looked unwell, to say the least. The worst part is, I'll never know. Maybe it was just the exaggerated anxiety of a kid blowing things out of proportion. But every part of him was screaming to me that something was wrong. Remembering how it felt to look into his eyes, I can't help but believe it. But what's even worse is the idea that before or after it happened to me, he might have beckoned a kid who didn't shake their head no. My house is haunted. In this story, this happened when I was a kid, and our house was surrounded by woods with only a few neighbors nearby. Occasionally, around midnight, I'd lie in bed unable to sleep, feeling a creepy vibe, like someone or something was watching me. Sometimes, I'd hear footsteps coming from the attic above my bedroom, sounding like someone was walking around. I would get up, go into the hallway, and see that everyone in my family was asleep with their doors closed. So, I'd go back to my bedroom and close the door. Lying in bed again, I'd hear the footsteps in the attic. Then, I'd hear something fall in my closet. Terrified, I'd run into my parents' bedroom and wake them up. They were confused at first, but after I explained what I heard, they said it was probably just my imagination and didn't believe me. They walked with me back to my bedroom, looked around, and then checked inside my closet. A board game had spilled all over the closet floor. It had been at the back of the top shelf, so there was no way it could have fallen without someone pushing it off. My parents helped me clean it up and put it back on the shelf. They assured me there was nothing to be scared of and put me back to bed. They went back to bed too, but a few minutes after they left, I heard someone whispering something. It sounded like they were calling my name. Then I saw a shadow that looked like a person walking across the wall by my closet. I thought it was a ghost and started freaking out again, grabbing my pillow and blanket to sleep on my parents' bedroom floor. After that, I slept on their floor for a few more nights. Eventually, I returned to sleeping in my bedroom, but whenever I lay in bed around midnight, I'd still hear the footsteps in the attic. This continued every once in a while until we eventually moved away. To this day, I still don't know what or who that was, but it still freaks me out. Subscribe.